rather because I can connect to your generation in a better way.
This week's podcast is Le'ilu Nishmas, Yosef ben Reb Aaron Tzvi Schreiber. Welcome to Prism of Torah with Rabbi Asaf Aaron Prisman, engaging Divrei Torah, packed with stories and practical insights. Find us wherever you get your podcasts or at prismoftorah.org.
Shalom Uvracha. In this week's parasha, Parshas Shoftim, we have a very interesting pasuk. The pasuk says, "Uvasa el hakohanim halevim velashofet asher hayeh bayamim hahem, vedarashta vegidu lecha et dvar hamishpat," which literally translates to, "And you shall come to the kohanim, to the levim, and to the judge who will be in those days. You shall inquire, and they will tell you the word of judgment." The question begs itself. Obviously, a person's going to go to the judges that are during his days. What is the Torah coming to teach us? It seems totally redundant. Rashi straight away brings the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, Daf Kafei Amud Beis, and says, even if you compare the judge of your generation to a judge from previous generations, and you feel the one from previous generations is way of a higher caliber, you still have to listen because you only have the judge during your days. Even after this Gemara that Rashi quotes, it seems a bit troubling. What is really the Torah telling us? It's still a bit obvious. There must be some lesson that we can take away from this. Based on Rav Palm, the deep idea over here that it's not a matter of, I can't believe these are the rabbis, these are the judges we have in our generation. It's rather understanding this is the map, the ways of our generation, the GPS, the ways that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told us, this is the Rav, this is the right vessel for you to hear what to do. What is Ratzon Hashem? What is Hashem's will? A person that's a true believer, a true ma'amin, realizes that whatever gedolim, whatever rabbinical figures were planted in his generation, even if when compared to previous generations, they're not on the same caliber, it does not matter. You were meant to hear the word of Hashem through them. And hence, when things are a gray area in your life, Aseh lecha Rav, which Rav? Obviously the Rav in your days, but Hashem is teaching you a lesson. And Rav Palm takes it even to a deeper step, and it's very nice. He says the following. He explains to us something brilliant about the Yetzer Hara, the Satan's brilliant strategy, through a Gemara that seems a bit strange. The Gemara in Bava Basra, Daf Tes Vav Amud Beis. The Satan praises Avraham HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he tells Hashem, wow, I've searched the whole world and history and found no one so faithful like your servant Avraham. Hashem said, what about Eov? Have you considered my servant Eov? The Satan immediately said, okay, let's test it out. And as we know, he had very famous troubles. The Satan put him through huge tests. But Rav Palm asks the obvious question. This Rav Palm I saw quoted by Rabbi Yisachar Frand, and he says, excuse me, is this the Satan's job? The evil inclination, that's his job? To compliment people? He does the opposite. Rav Palm answers that the truth of the matter is that what happened in these lines in the Gemara reveals a secret weapon that the Satan has. He wasn't really praising Avraham for the sake of praising Avraham. He wanted to set an impossible standard and to diminish everyone else, starting with Eov and everyone else. And if we're honest with ourselves, we know that we have this a lot in our lives. That a lot of times we tend to have this Yetzer Hara to compare, yeah, he's not bad, but he's not as good as so-and-so used to be. In fact, there's a clear halacha in Hilchos Lashon Hara that it's avak Lashon Hara to say even something good about someone to your friend, unless your friend is a huge tzaddik that already completed beating this type of Yetzer Hara, this evil inclination. And you should not even tell him something good about someone else. The Chafetz Chaim says it's always better not bichlal to speak about other people. But even to speak good is going to potentially entice the other person to say, And how often have we heard this? Yeah, person so-and-so is very good in X, but in Y he's not so good. That is one of the weapons that the Satan has and uses. Rav Palm wants to teach us, perhaps this is the hidden message in this pasuk. The Torah is telling us it doesn't matter what happened in history. Don't you dare compare. Comparing would just lead to something bad. You're falling into the trap of the Satan of the Yetzer Hara. You have to realize that whatever deck of cards you got, whatever rabbis were planted in your generation, that is the best, and from an infinite wisdom perspective, i.e. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is the best vessel for you to understand what Ratzon Hashem is for you. The bottom line is, it's not about just rabbis, it's about how we navigate the spiritual reality. Every time you perhaps have on your tip of your tongue saying something like, Rabbi X would never measure up to the Chafetz Chaim, we're actually in a certain way quoting the Satan's script from Baba Basel. Instead, we should train ourselves to think, what message is Hashem sending me through the teacher, through the rabbinical figure he planted in my path? I have a friend that came from America, but we learned together in some yeshiva in Bnei Brak. And he was telling me about his yeshiva Ktana. He requested that I do not mention the names or the name of the yeshiva, and hence I'll keep the names vague. It was part of this yeshiva Ktana that there was a very well-known, established, elderly Rosh Yeshiva. He passed away at a very late age, and my friend told me at the time he felt his whole world collapsed at that time. For 3 years, he watched this giant who learned directly from the gedolim of pre-Europe, delivered shiurim in an unbelievably way, with extreme clarity despite his old age. He could literally say many dapim Gemara by heart, as his eyes were blazing with fire of Torah. When the new Rosh Yeshiva, the new young Rosh Yeshiva, I should say, took over the position of the Rosh Yeshiva, it was a big disappointment for him. He felt like, what am I going to do now? Can't even compare to the old Rosh Yeshiva. How am I going to be able to grow in such an environment, he thought to himself. But then he told me that everything changed during a late night conversation. His friend's younger brother was struggling with shidduchim, anxiety, and all kinds of pressure around him. Their parents, overwhelmed, suggested he speak to this young Rosh Yeshiva. My friend laughed off the idea, this young Rosh Yeshiva, how is he going to help you? Until he actually overheard their 2-hour conversation through the door. This young Rosh Yeshiva understood every nuance of modern dating issues that were only relevant, without getting into details, to this young generation. He connected to the younger generation. He understood them better. His advice, perhaps, wasn't so ancient, but that is exactly the reason it managed to penetrate and affect this boy, this bacher, to be ready for the dating issues he was running into. My friend started looking at this Rosh Yeshiva from a totally different perspective. He started consulting with him later on in his life about how to balance learning and supporting his family in today's crazy economy. Rosh Yeshiva helped him out how to balance his life with the Gemara, the Shulchan Aruch, and a deep understanding of the workplace dynamics. He then told me, my friend then told me, he realized, yes, the first Rosh Yeshiva was mamish an angel, a malach. But on the other hand, he never had to answer shilas about Zoom meetings on Chol HaMoed, or maintaining ruchnius while working from home. At one point, he even heard this young Rosh Yeshiva say to him, there's no doubt in my mind, Hashem didn't give this yeshiva to me now because I'm greater than the other Rosh Yeshivas, but rather because I can connect to your generation in a better way. It's all about compatibility and connecting. And whoever Hashem planted in our life, especially the rabbinical figures, they are the ones that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is hinting to us. They are the ones that can be compatible to you with your struggles in your generation. This reminds me of a famous story that our Rav told us when we grew up in yeshiva in Bnei Brak, Rav Kamenetz. And he said he had a very close connection with Rav Shach. And once he told me, he asked Rav Shach, what is it better? Is it better for me to go to this very top elite yeshiva that I can just make it in there, but for sure I'll be one of the weaker Talmidim? Or should I go to a not so elite yeshiva and perhaps even merit to be the star over there? What do you think? What does the Rosh Yeshiva think? And Rav Shach answered, it's true that there's a famous Mishnah, a famous Chazal that says it's better to be the tail to the lions, hevezanav la'arayot, and not the head of foxes. Ve'al teh rosh leshualim. But then Rav Shach said, that's true when the tail is actually connected to the lion. But if the tail is not connected to the lion, it's not going to help. You need to be a tail that is connected to a lion, and then it is better than to be the head of a fox. Have a good Shabbos.
This concludes another episode of the Prism of Torah. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something valuable. If you did, please subscribe to the podcast and give a 5-star rating. You can also find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts or our own website, prismoftorah.com, where we have a full archive of all our past episodes. We would like to thank Yona Vefa for the recording equipment and Eli Podcast Productions for handling all our post-podcast productions. Join us next week for another enlightening conversation on the Prism of Torah.